Welcome back to Trillium Talk and our continuing coverage of the 2025 Ontario provincial election. We've reached out to all party leaders for a chance to come on to talk about their party's platform and what they would do should they win the election and become Premier of Ontario. From housing to healthcare and tariffs, we cover it all. Today, it's a special edition of Trillium Talk powered by the Inside the Village podcast. Michael Friscolanti and I go one-on-one with the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Bonnie Crombie. Back on Inside the Village across the Village Media Network with Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief. I'm Scott Sexsmith, and very excited to have with us from the road, on the bus, the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Bonnie Crombie. Bonnie, welcome to Inside the Village. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me on again.
Okay, Bonnie, most importantly, I want to start with something very important. You've challenged Doug Ford to a push-up competition. Have you heard back from him?
Actually, I have not. No. So to put things in the proper context, we were comparing our Super Bowl ads yesterday, and I said I was willing to go head-to-head with him in any competition, and certainly happy to debate him on Monday. But I'm happy to go head-to-head with him on any terms, and whether it's my turf or his turf. And then I said, my turf's the gym or the rock climbing wall, quite frankly. I missed that, but rock climbing wall works for me too. And if he wanted to go into an open competition and do push-ups or burpees or climb a rock climbing wall, I'm happy to do that. I like the idea of one-to-one head-on competition.
I'd almost pay my $200 rebate check to see Doug Ford on a rock wall.
That'd be pretty great, yeah.
Let's do it. Can you guys challenge him for me?
Yeah, we should. I'm
He's
sure
willing to do burpees or a rock climbing wall.
I'm sure he's heard your challenge loud and clear. Speaking of the $200 rebate checks, we know there have been some problems with these, Bonnie, from misprinted names. I believe the Toronto Star reported this weekend that some dead people have received these checks. Did you get yours, and is your name right on it?
I did get mine on Friday, and I did deposit it successfully. And you know what? It's really going to help top up my groceries and pay some bills this month. But next month, that's my question. What happens next month? So these are pre-election checks and clearly a pre-election bribe.
Yeah.
And really, when you vote for Ontario Liberals, we're going to put $1,150 back in your pocket every year, not a one-time check. And by the way, that one-time check could have put that $3 billion investment into your health care, right? Or into building housing, frankly. But whatever it went into, it certainly, or it could have gone into more affordability measures. But I think that if people realized, they wouldn't be, they wouldn't be so happy about receiving a one-time check. It's good to have once, but you got to think about what's next month. And of course, we said we would cut income taxes on the first $75,000 you earn and take off the HST on home heating and hydro. And of course, we're cutting small business taxes, and we're going to make housing more affordable. So quite frankly, we're going to put more money back in the hands of people every month, not just a one-time check.
I think it's important to point out that Bonnie is on a bus, so in case
Yes.
you see any sudden movement, that's the why. I just want to make sure people are...
Strap in, Bonnie.
You're busy, you're going from place to place. We do want to talk about a lot of those issues that you raised, Bonnie, but let's stick with some numbers first, with just polling numbers, right? You've seen the polls. A lot of people are watching the polls. I believe Nanos today had a survey out saying that you're gaining slightly on Doug Ford. Among decided voters, the PCs now enjoy 44% support compared to 31% for your Liberals, 19% for the NDP, 4% for the Greens. I guess the question on it, a lot of people's minds, is do you honestly believe you can catch him by February 27th?
Look, we have a lot of momentum right now. We have the wind in our sails, and that's pretty evident at the doors. And you just have to go to a door to hear what's happening on the ground. And I go canvassing with my candidates in every riding I'm in. I've gone in my own riding. I'm heading there right now. In fact, I'm going to be knocking on doors with some educators this afternoon with the teachers' unions, and I'm really happy to do that. But it's visceral. People are very upset. They're angry with Doug Ford. They want to punish him for the early election call because they know it's unnecessary. They know that he has a mandate until June of 2026, and he should be at his desk working hard for the people of Ontario. We're under a trade war threat. We're under a tariff war threat. There's not another premier in this country that would think that this was the right time to go to an election, to go to the polls. He should be at his desk working hard for the people of Ontario, not protecting our jobs. He's only interested in protecting his own job. He needs to be protecting jobs and doing what he's supposed to provide the basics for Ontarians, getting them a family doctor, cutting their taxes, building the housing he said he would build. When you look back at all his promises, starting at 2007, he said he'd end hallway medicine. Well, he didn't get it done. Then he said he would cut your taxes. He didn't get it done, did he? Then in 2022, he said he would build 1.5 million homes. We had some hope. I got young kids. They want to purchase a home, start a family. We have the worst record in the country. We are a drag on the national numbers. He didn't get it done. We have the best housing plan, and we will get it done.
Bonnie, how much headway do you think you're making on getting your message and your party's proposals out there? Because myself and others on our team have heard from Ontarians who ask whether the Liberal Party even has a leader. Do you think you've done enough to ensure that Ontarians know who you are and what you stand for?
Well, it's a challenge. Certainly Doug Ford has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on pre-election advertising, both the PC party and the Ontario government. I have been traveling across the province, meeting with residents in small towns. I love meeting farmers and hearing about their issues. I like listening to small resident groups. I've traveled to the north, to the east, the west. I love going into the Francophone communities because their issues are a little more unique. And in the north, they're much more acute than they are here in Southern Ontario. So I have been traveling, and I guess, one of the cutest examples, a couple, I was in Stratford at something called I think it was the Roaring Bull, and a little cheese shop with local cheeses. And a man tapped me on the back, and I turned around and said hello. And he said, "You better win. We're counting on you to win and fix Ontario." So that was, he certainly knew who I was in the middle of the rural community in Stratford. And then up in Chapleau, I was headed to Timmins, in a little town of about 1,200 people, and I walked in, and the proprietor looked up. I was cleaning a dish, and she said, "Oh my gosh, Bonnie Crombie, what are you doing in Chapleau?" So it's getting out there. Of course, that's the whole reason of calling a snap election, right? Before I built up too much name recognition, he's trying to protect his job and running away from an RCMP investigation all at the same time. So that's why we have a snap election call in the dead of winter, which costs us $189 million, which of course is money that should have got into our healthcare system.
Bonnie, can I ask you about that? Were you caught off guard a little bit by this election call? I mean, we just see that some of the candidates, not even your nominations, came out today for some of the ridings. Were you caught a little off guard by this, or did you see it coming?
Well, honestly, we have fixed election dates here in Ontario, and he has a mandate and a majority government, so he can pass any legislation he wants up until June of 2026. So what was the need to go in February of 2025? And clearly, there are a couple of reasons. One is that he's trying to run away from the RCMP, and we know that to be true because obviously more allegations came out last week when some staffers allegedly lobbying as a sideline business while being employed by the province. Those allegations are being investigated, and it reminded us that the Ford government is still under investigation for the $8 billion Greenbelt scandal. So there's that. There's clinging to his job while people aren't paying attention. And then, of course, you've got a new Liberal leader that's trying to build up some name recognition as well. So hence we have a snap election call. But listen, I'm really proud of the slate of candidates that we have attracted. Former Olympians. I have the former head of the OMA. I have educators, nurses, doctors. We have elected officials on the ballot. We are attracting really top-notch candidates right across the province who are community leaders in their communities. And I think we're going to give those other parties a run for their money. And I think you're starting to see movement in the polls.
All right, Bonnie, when can we, as Ontarians, expect your full platform to be released?
Yes, soon, and it will be costed. You've heard the main elements. We have to flesh out some other things and get them posted, such as our education platform. But you well know that we're running on three things primarily, which is to ensure that the 2.5 million people who today don't have a family doctor will have a family doctor. That's our commitment. That's our pledge. That's my number one pledge to Ontarians to ensure that everyone has a family doctor. And of course, we're going to bring back some affordability for people because they're struggling, and I see it every day. Every time I go into a grocery store, I see young moms, I see seniors in particular, looking at the price of food. They can't afford their rent and their groceries in the same month. We see the surge of use of our food banks. And that's because Doug Ford doesn't care. He promised to cut taxes. He didn't do it, but we will. We have a number of measures in place to put money back in their pockets. And he promised to build housing, and he never did. And we've got our young people, including my own children. This is very personal for me. They said, Mom, two of them got married. They want to start a family, and they want a home. And Mom, you got to do something, make housing more affordable. So, we had a housing panel, and I said, look, we got to make the cost of building land cheaper. We got to make the price cheaper for the consumer, for the home purchaser, and we got to make cities whole. That's your mandate. Now go do it. And they did.
Sounds easy. Speaking of the sticking with the doctor shortage, this is a problem obviously that we've seen for years, right? Especially in Northern Ontario where we are. Yeah. It's a much bigger problem even than in the South. But it has been a problem for a long time. We've heard different people make various promises over the years to help fix the doctor shortage. What's going to be different about your plan? How will you get that done in 4 years where everyone has a primary care provider?
Number one, funding, and number two, political will. When you say it's your priority and you're going to put all your effort towards fixing it, that's what we're going to do. We're going to incentivize medical students and doctors to do their training up north. If not, to move up north, we'll incentivize them properly to do so. And we're going to make them sign multi-year service agreements to stay in the north. We'll even waive their tuitions if they stay in the north. We're very hopeful if they sign a multi-year agreement to stay in the north, then they'll settle down and have a family and realize how beautiful it is and how the cost of living it goes further for a family doc. Plus, we're going to make it more attractive to be a family doc and attract them back to the profession, right? And 6,000 family doctors have left the profession to do other medical disciplines. So we need to bring them back. We need to train more doctors through our medical schools, double the number of our young doctors in the residency programs. You know that we only have half as many medical students going through as any other province does. So that's just not right. So they're going to other provinces, and we need to bring foreign trained doctors through the system, through that mentoring system. We need to bring them through as well. And when I say foreign trained, sometimes it's our own children that go abroad for training, whether they go to the US or the UK or Bahamas or even Poland, where my people are from. They do their medical training abroad. Let's get them back. And now in the spirit of patriotism, too, we're providing a financial incentive to bring back any doctor or nurse practicing south of the border to come back to Canada to practice. So maybe they're living in Windsor and work in Detroit. We want them working in Windsor. We want them working in Northern Ontario. Same true of upstate New York or even Buffalo and Niagara Falls border, wherever. We want them back. And so we're going to provide a financial incentive for them to do that. So we need to open up medical schools. We need to double the residency programs. We need to double the number of doctors going through what's called the mentorship program, which is the PRO, Practice Ready Ontario. So that'll equal 3,100 new doctors, and that should satisfy the 2.5 million people that don't have a family doctor today.
Will you keep track of this as the years go on? For example, would there be a progress report perhaps at year one of the Bonnie Crombie government? Here's where we are on this promise, because it is really the most important thing that are on the market. That is my key pledge to Ontarians. You hold me accountable to that. If I deliver nothing else, I don't care. I'm going to deliver a family doctor. That's my promise. That's my pledge, my number one pledge. Yes, we're going to make life more affordable, but that's easy. That's just legislation. Those are tax measures. That's easy to do. Yes, we're going to build more housing because we have a plan to do that too. But to go out there and recruit those doctors and incentivize them and bring them back, that's work. And that's what we're going to put all our effort working towards. All right, we have that on tape, so that's good to know for the next time we chat, Bonnie. I need to ask you about the campaign bus slogan on the side of the bus. I think the bus you're on right now, the 11,000 people that you say died while waiting for surgery last year. There have been some reporting from our team at the Trillium that number is actually quite a lot lower than that. I know you've been asked about this in the past, but it's more like 1,400. And one of your own candidates also acknowledged that the number is not just surgeries, but people dying while waiting for scans, for example. What do you plan to do with this number on the side of your bus? Will you change it?
So No, absolutely not. I stand by that number. In fact, I think it's underestimated. We got that number from CUPE. And quite frankly, if other parties or other unions don't like that number, what number of deaths is acceptable to them? If it's not 11,000, is it 5,000? Is it 1,000? Is it one? Because one death isn't acceptable to me. So it doesn't matter what the number is on the side of the bus. What matters to me is that people are not going to die in a Bonnie Crombie, Ontario, waiting for surgery or waiting for treatment.
All right, let's talk tariffs. I know you've been very clear that you believe that Doug Ford used the tariff threat to call an early, unnecessary election. You just brought it up a few minutes ago. But Trump's announcement right before the Super Bowl, yesterday, in fact, on board Air Force One, that he plans to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, obviously very serious. Certainly in places like the Sioux and Hamilton, where the steel industry is so critical to the local economies, people are understandably worried. I guess the question, Bonnie, if you were premier, what would you do?
So let me say that, first of all, what I wouldn't do is cheer on Donald Trump, as Doug Ford did. You know, just last week, he continued to say he absolutely supported Donald Trump and still does. Who supports that man who we know is planning to wage a trade war against us and impose very punitive tariffs? Who stands by that man? The only man who stands by him is Doug Ford, because he's using it as a self-interested election call. It's the only reason he supports him. He's been caught flat-footed, that we are not ready for this tariff threat, and he should be at his desk working right now to protect us. Now, we need to fly the Team Canada flag. We need to have a very strong response. We need to protect our steel and aluminum industries. And we need to work hand in hand with the federal government, who, by the way, will be leading the negotiations. Let's not pretend for a second that we're going to have the premiers around the table. They're going to be providing input into the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, who will be leading the negotiations, perhaps Minister Champagne as well. But we need to take a tough stand. When you're dealing with a bully, you need to be very strong. You can't show any weakness. So yes, I support dollar for dollar retaliatory measures. Absolutely 100%. Where's Doug Ford's plan? Take beer and wine and spirit produced in the United States out of the LCBO? Great, but that's not a plan. Where's the plan to protect jobs? Jobs that have been leaving this province, incidentally. We have the highest unemployment rate that we've had in a decade. Manufacturing jobs have left the province. Construction jobs have left the province. 140,000 more people are unemployed. He has not insulated our economy, not set us up for growth, and not protected jobs. I'll say it again. The only job he wants to protect right now through this election is his own.
Bonnie, have you heard from the leadership at any of these companies like Dofasco or Algoma Steel or anyone senior in the steel industry? What are they telling you?
I've not heard directly from specific CEOs, just from industry analysts. And what they want is what I've been describing, a strong response. Now, if I had been premier, which is what I was hoping you would ask me, so I'll tell you anyways, I would have worked hard to diversify our trade. I would set us up and not put all our eggs in one basket. You know, when I was the mayor of the great city of Mississauga, we had 4 pillars, largely: life sciences, advanced manufacturing, including aerospace, IT, and the financial sector. And we were well insulated. If one of those sectors was failing, the other ones were stronger. That set us up for growth, set us up for investment, and created jobs. Now, look, given the doctor shortage and the price of housing, it's very hard to attract investment into Ontario. That's why he's been struggling, because companies don't want to locate here if their employees can't purchase housing, can't afford the rent, and can't access a doctor, and can't have wait times of 20 hours in a hospital. So those are some of the impediments. Those are some of the barriers we're facing because of the life under Doug Ford. Doug Ford's Ontario has provided barriers for investment. So we needed to have diversified our trading partners. We needed to have diversified our economic sectors and created and protected jobs. He hasn't done that. We need to break down interprovincial trade barriers. He hasn't done that. I think the desire among the premiers exists today, but we need to get that done to make an even flow of goods and services and labor to move across provincial boundaries so we can trade interprovincially. Now, what we also need to do is invest. So what to kickstart the economy, let's start investing in infrastructure. That's the best way to get things going. So it's whether it's hospitals or schools who are in sad state of repair, in our roads and our public transit, or in affordable housing. And as you well know, we have a plan to jumpstart that. And then finally, we need to, we have a fund proposed called the FTF, Fight Tariff Fund, also kind of known as Trump Fund.
I wasn't going to say that.
I figured that out.
All right, you said it. That's good.
You guys are sharp. The FTF. And that would allow businesses to borrow at government rates. And I think that's a huge incentive to them. It'll attract capital into Ontario and give them access to more money and get them, protect them so that if they needed a little additional money to protect themselves during this crisis, they can have it. I think that's a huge incentive to allow businesses to afford them the government borrowing rate. So I have a fund. I have a plan. I would have been working on this plan from the time I was elected. I mean, it's great that he's running ads about Ontario on the Super Bowl and flooding the U.S. economy, U.S. markets, key markets with ads now. But where's he been for 7 years? Does he have relationships with the key governors? He's been premier for 7 years. Can he name the 17 states where we're their top or second largest trading partner? Has he looked eyeball to eyeball with them and said, buddy, hey, you really going to do this? Come on, we're trading partners. We need each other. I close deals by flying to different countries to meet CEOs, to sign off on those deals to bring investment back to my city when I was mayor. Has he done that? Has he built those relationships? Because he hasn't. You don't just sit in your office and do whatever. Plot unnecessary, costly elections. You do the job that you were elected to do. And part of that is building relationships with other political leaders and other business leaders.
Those are great questions to ask him. If he agrees to come on the podcast, we'll make sure we ask him some of those questions, Bonnie. Just to switch gears, because we know exactly. We know you're very busy and you're on your way to another event. Just to switch gears to something different. ODSP, I think the other day I saw that you promised to double the rate of ODSP over a 2-year period, which I think is a lot more than your predecessor. I think Stephen Del Duca threw out 20% was the idea, I believe, at the time. So to double that, and we've heard a lot, our sites especially have done a lot of reporting on people who are on ODSP in our communities that we're in. This is obviously a concern for a lot of people. Why is this important to you to do, and how do you cover the cost of that is the big question.
There is so much waste in the system. Like I can list $7 billion off the top of my head. They would rather build a fantasy tunnel to nowhere at a cost of $150 billion in a 40-year effort that won't reduce congestion for 40 years. Like, let's be realistic. They gave a foreign spa at Ontario Place $2 billion, right? Which is more than they're investing in healthcare. Think about that for a minute. Their plan is $1.9 billion, and they gave Therma Spa $2.1 billion. Think about that. Where are your priorities? A foreign spa, right? So there's lots of waste in the system. The pre-election checks are $3 billion as well. I had to put that $3 billion. That's my plan to incentivize doctors, to bring you a family doctor over a 4-year period. There's a lot of waste in the system. So that's where the money would come from. But ODSP is important because it speaks to the most vulnerable in our community. And we want everybody not just to survive, and these people are barely surviving. We want them to thrive. And this is long overdue. And I've seen firsthand the lineups at our food banks and these people who we really need to care for. And many of them are unemployable because they have physical or mental health issues. And I think it's the right thing to do for the most vulnerable in our community to double the ODSP.
Let's talk about,
and it'll be phased in over a 2-year period.
Thank you, Bonnie. Just to stick with vulnerable in our community, obviously one of the biggest issues Ontarians are talking about is our homelessness and encampments in a lot of our communities around the province. Yeah. I've seen you speak openly and honestly about how your biological father struggled with addiction and homelessness. So this issue obviously has impacted you in a personal way, and it's something you understand in maybe in a more deeper way than a lot of others do. How do we even begin to turn this around, I guess, Bonnie, is the question. I mean, we see so many of our communities struggling with it.
It's political will, right? You have to call out the problem and wanted to address it. So we need to have a plan and put some real money behind it. So I was chair of the Big City Mayors when I was the mayor of Mississauga, and we sat around tables and discussed the issue. Because quite frankly, it's just another form of downloading, and it's shifting the cost from the income taxpayer to the property taxpayer at the municipal level. And municipalities and mayors across, small towns and large towns are doing whatever they can to address the problems themselves, from modular homes to tiny homes. I know the town of Belleville and the town of Kingston as well created their own recovery center and puts wraparound services around it. And this was municipal tax dollars that were used. And they shouldn't have to do that. It's not their responsibility. But because there's an absence of a plan, an absence of funding. Yes, heart hubs, great. 35 beds, really? Do you know the size of the problem this is, the scale of problem it is? We need to have a plan. We need to get rid of the encampments, but where are you going to put these people? Where are you going to put these people? The Premier says he'll use the notwithstanding clause to do what? Move the encampment where? They'll only move to the location. Will he institutionalize them? Is it a breach of their civil rights? He has no plan. There's no plan. You have to put these people somewhere and give them the treatment they need, the services they need to get them off drugs and treat their mental health issues. As you well know, this is very personal for me. Thank goodness places, men's shelter like the Seton House exist, so that my biological dad, towards the end of his life, had somewhere to spend his final years, get the care and the treatment he needed. But that's needed everywhere. And this is being ignored. One heart hub and 10 major centers with inadequate beds isn't going to solve this.
And the reality is it's not a cheap solution, right? I mean, I think the report that was done recently by the Municipalities Association talked about how this is like an $11 billion fix over the next decade. Are you committed to spending that? Pardon, go ahead.
Let's get at it.
Yeah. So you're committed to spending that kind of money to make sure we have all those services in place for people who need them.
We need a plan, and it needs to be funded properly. We need to get people off the streets and to get them into supportive housing with wraparound services. Supportive housing is needed in the smallest rural town in southeast and southwestern Ontario as it is in northern Ontario. In fact, Thunder Bay and Sudbury have higher opioid overdose rates than anywhere else in Canada other than Vancouver. Let's start with the most key critical cities. I've seen the problem firsthand in Ottawa. I've been to those centers. I've seen it in Kingston, in Belleville, and in Western Ontario and London too. The mayors are doing whatever they can, but it shouldn't be on the back of the property taxpayer.
All right, just a couple of questions left. Bonnie, we know you're tight for time. As leader, you promised to bring back the Universal Basic Income Pilot. Is that still a priority for you?
I'm going to start with the ODSP, doubling that and see how it goes. I would have loved to look at the results of the basic income pilot and still will look at it. I'll get our policy people to look at it and see what good it could produce. But let's start with the ODSP.
Can I ask you too, Bonnie? You've mentioned on the campaign trail about the
You didn't ask me who I was supporting last night, by the way.
Oh yeah, was anybody watching that game last night? You were just watching it for the commercial,
for the commercials, I wanted to see our ads.
How many times did the ads run?
We had two separate ads.
Yep.
First time Liberals have run ads in the Super Bowl, so I was very proud of that. And one was calling out Doug Ford for his support of Donald Trump, his continued support for Donald Trump. And the other one was our ad on healthcare and how we'll ensure that every Ontarian will have access to a family doctor within 4 years.
Your fundraising must be going well.
I was supporting the Eagles, just saying.
That's good. The fundraising must be going well, though, to afford Super Bowl ads.
Right. Yes.
Will you tell us how much they cost, or is that private information?
I actually don't know. I just know we support it. All I get told is, can you keep fundraising, Bonnie? I'm like, okay.
All right, that's right. All right, let me ask you this before we head off. You have talked on the campaign trail about launching investigations of some of the things that Ford has done, some of the deals he's done since taking into office. We know that Ford kind of promised this and did this when he took over from the Liberals. I guess my question is, why is this a good idea? I mean, is there a risk of further polarizing the province when each party comes in? It's kind of a U.S. style thing where the next party comes in and investigates the one before it. And sorry,
no.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's all about transparency and accountability and being responsible for your actions. Every time they announce a deal, I stand back and think, I wonder who's benefiting from this. somehow this is always a shady deal. And whether it's, the CEOs of those big box corporations, most of them aren't even Canadian, they're US corporations that are benefiting. When you see the Staples deal, the Service Ontario deal going to Staples and to Walmart, expediting the sale of beer and wine at $2 billion over to corner grocery stores, 7-Eleven, and grocers as well. And Walmart, once again, it's always somebody benefiting. And now you've got a foreign-owned spa who have got a sweetheart deal on the rent, because if you're using public land, you should be paying proper rent. And they've got a sweetheart deal. They're only paying half the rent that they should be paying to open up a luxury spa on Ontario Place. So a lot is concerning. And they act without accountability, without transparency. Most of these deals are done in secrecy. They won't show us the contracts so we can scrutinize them. And that's just wrong. So yes, we are going to get a special investigator in to take a look at these contracts, see who's really benefited from them. And if we can stop any of them, we will.
That's what I was going to ask you. Would you cancel these deals? Would you stop sales?
If we can, we absolutely will. That's why we're bringing in the special investigators.
Including alcohol in corner stores? Is that something you potentially consider reversing?
Look, no. I would have allowed the sale of alcohol, beer and alcohol, to go into the corner stores in 2025 as they had been scheduled. My issue was expediting that, tearing up the contracts, providing those incentives, paying off those unions just to get them on the shelves a year early. That was a $2 billion waste of money. Nobody is screaming, Bonnie, can we please get beer and wine at the gas bar? They're saying, Bonnie, how can we get a family doctor?
Scott was yelling that, Bonnie. Scott was yelling that.
It's a question of priorities. Again, they have the wrong priorities, putting beer and wine in big box stores and grocery stores and in gas bars when people are screaming, crying for a family doctor, and to reduce wait times in hospitals. This is a Ford driving in reverse. He's got the wrong priorities.
All right, great conversation, and you've got some doors to knock on. Bonnie Crombie, leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Appreciate the conversation, Bonnie. This was fantastic. Good luck the rest of the way.
Happy to chat anytime, guys. Thanks very much. I really like this long format, in fact, so we can have this great conversation.
Absolutely. We try to do that. Thanks, Bonnie.
Our thanks to Ontario Liberal Party leader Bonnie Crombie for joining us on this special episode of Trillium Talk, powered by the Inside the Village podcast. For complete Ontario election coverage, be sure to check the Village media outlet in your city. Become a Trillium Insider today at thetrillium.ca and watch Trillium Talk every weekday right here from the campaign trail with our team of reporters at the Trillium. For all of us at Village Media, thanks for watching.